Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I'm delighted to be joined by Ahmad Najjar, MVP Senior Consultant in Info Worker in Norway, who will be talking to you today about working with documents in Power Apps. Remember to join the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC21. Don't forget to check out the Resource Center. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit sharepointeurope.com and click the content link at the top. ESPC21 Online will take place on the 1st and 2nd of June 2021. To be a part of this event, register today at sharepointeurope.com and attend for free. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you have in the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter, Ahmad Najjar. Hello, Ahmad.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me. So let me first show my screen, and there you go. All right. And okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining this webinar, Working with Documents in Power Apps. I hope that this session will be beneficial for you. It's a very controversial subject, which is actually working with documents in Power Apps, because usually it's not a straightforward thing. So the most part of this session is going to be demo. So I hope that you will enjoy it. First things first, I would like to introduce myself. So I'm based in Oslo in Norway. I'm a senior consultant at InfoWorker. I'm a business applications MVP, a passionate, enthusiastic developer, heart and soul, and been working with over 15 years of experience with Microsoft-based products and services, mainly worked with SharePoint. Lately, or recently, I was just working with SharePoint PMP in PowerShell, and as well as among those two tools, I work with Power Automate, Power Apps, and Logic Apps. I'm also a co-organizer for a new event on the block, which is the Collab Days Nordics. If you follow me on Twitter, you definitely hear about this more. And that will be it. All right, so first things first, I would like to go through a couple of slides just to talk about basic stuff. And of course, an introduction is due at that point. But we'll go a couple of slides, probably just 5 slides max, and then we'll just go straight into the demos. Microsoft combined capabilities of 4 services, as you can see in the Power Platform, into a low-code development platform, which helps empower people and elevate their talents in the day-to-day work that they do every day. So while the platform has an abundance of capabilities which will impress any developer, but it's also designed to be approachable and accessible to everyone. Now, digital transformation means more efficient use of your data, gaining insights, which facilitates more intelligent business processes and decision making. However, organizations cannot achieve this efficiency with developers only, because there are not enough of them. So accordingly, the Power Platform was built on one foundational goal, which is to empower the limitless potential of citizen developers, or even everyone who can use it, use its capabilities to unlock insights and develop processes. So the Power Platform is a single low-code platform that spans over the Office 365, Dynamics 365, Azure, and even standalone applications. All right. Okay, so the Microsoft Power Platform tooling makes it possible to quickly customize the Microsoft Office 365 Dynamics 365 and standalone apps with its out-of-the-box capabilities, if we can call them out of the box. But that doesn't mean that you're limited, and that's something that we'll see today. So you can go beyond the tooling to solve more sophisticated scenarios. For instance, build apps to integrate directly with your own services, extending the out-of-the-box capabilities to take it into the next level. And that applies to today's webinar. In other words, you could extend your Power Platform beyond the tooling of the point and click. Okay, so working with documents. So usually working with documents in Power Apps is not a straightforward task, like except for one scenario, which is if you're using the form. As for the rest of the scenarios that we will see, it's actually not a straightforward task. And then we need to do some kind of like a customization or manipulation, or even use flows to be able to consume the data and take our application to the next level. So for example, other scenarios that we're going to be talking about today, for example, saving to document libraries, or even saving multiple documents, or even using some other controls to save documents. So I remember when Power Apps was released back in the days, there used to be a control which is called Add Documents. This control does not exist anymore. So, but there's a replacement, which is something that is called Add Pictures. But there's a drawback using that that control, and that's something we're going to see as well in the demos. But it's not a straightforward task, and that comes to the point where there's certain things that needs to be explained why it's actually not a straightforward task. And with that, I will just show you the demos that we're actually going to go through. So the demos that we're going to go through today are actually 5 demos. They're kind of like how-tos. I will show you exactly in details how each and every one is actually implemented. And I will try to go in details because this is more like a demo illustrated session or webinar. So the first demo will be item attachments, how to use item attachments in SharePoint, and how to attach items, whether that you're doing that through a form, or whether that you'll be doing that in a different way, using the picture control, which is something that you could as well utilize to add documents as well. PDF viewer, that is something that probably gets overlooked sometimes, and it's actually working with documents, so probably I would just like to talk about this as well. Adding documents to document library, and finally we're going to be talking about adding multiple to document libraries, adding multiple documents to a document library. With that, I will just share the other screen that I have here, and I will show screen 1. And I'll get this out of the way, and this one as well, and then we'll open our demo. All right, so I think that you'll be able to see the Power Apps environment right now that I have here. And this is our very first demo, which is item attachment using forms. This is a pretty much straightforward. Now, I believe that most of you have already used that. And with each and every SharePoint list that you use, or not a document library, but I mean a SharePoint list, you get an attachment control. And then we have the site in here, which is called List with Attachments. I've created this list, and it just have a title, and it does not have any other properties. So once you come here into Power Apps and you insert a form, an edit form, and then you will choose the data source that you want this form to take items from. So by default, it will actually create the controls that you need to insert data into that. And it will create an attachment control for you. And this is something that is pretty straightforward. So I'm actually using exactly the same thing in here, but I added the buttons in here. And soon enough, I will just show you what is the code that I wrote in here to save the items to the documents. But as for now, as I told you before, you just need to attach this into a source. And after you attach that into a source, that you're ready to go. This is a pretty much straightforward. There's no hocus pocus in here. There's no magic. I do have a gallery which is actually showing the items that is getting its item from a list with attachments, which is basically this guy over here. So let's go and see what do we have in the save button. In the save button, I do have submit form, which is form 1, which is this guy over here. And then I have refresh, which is going to do a round trip to the source and just refresh the data from the source to show it in here in the gallery. And the gallery is actually feeding from that one. So in the add new, this one, I'm just actually resetting the form, and it's actually using the reset form function. And I pass the form, which is this guy over here. And then I update the context for the form mode to be new. So the form modes actually works in different ways. So you have the edit mode, and there you have the new mode, and you have the view mode. So in the view mode, usually you're just trying to view the data. So if we run this over here and try to show this guy over here, we're actually in edit mode right now. We don't have a view mode, but if you want to have it in view mode and you don't want users to edit that, so you would change the form mode to view. But this view here is actually the edit mode, so we'll be able to probably delete some stuff, edit the data in here, and then we click save. The function that we have here, which is submit form, will actually handles everything for us. So it's actually what you see is what you get. There's nothing else I've actually done here on this form. And that's why I would just like to go into the details there, because the more we go into the rabbit hole, if we could call that, the more that we have other things that we need to do to save the documents into our sources. The reason I used SharePoint as a data source, because we have two ways to inserting data into SharePoint. It's either you could have it as an attachment as part of an item with a list, or you want to save it as a document in a document library. Now, pretty much if you want to save the data into, let's say, OneDrive, or you want to save it into blob storage in Azure, so you will actually follow some other demos that I have actually listed in here, and I will talk about that later during this webinar. I'll just click add new in here. And just one thing I want to point out before I actually continue. And you remember that I have here that I have update context, which is actually a local variable. And I changed the value, which is var form mode. I changed that to new, or either I do that, I change that to edit if I click on this guy over here. So it's either edit or new. So if I go to the form itself, and there's something that is called in here form or default mode. And in the default mode, what I'm actually doing is I'm just changing the mode using that local variable, which is var form mode, and that's it. There's nothing else I've actually am doing it. And as I said before, this should be a straightforward thing for you. So let's try something here. ESPC, let's say 2021, and then I'll attach some items. I do have a couple of images here. I could just put some images. You could just do whatever you want here. So as you can see here, it's just showing all files. So whether this is a PDF or whether it's an image, so it doesn't matter. I think that I do have some documents here. So I could just go in here and go to that one. Probably this is too large. So probably I'll just choose this guy over here. So this doesn't matter. So I'll just save that in here, and I should get the item with 2 attachments. And if I click in here, so I get the documents as part of the attachment for this item. All right. Is there any questions so far? Let me see.
None so far, Ahmed.
All right, perfect. Okay, so we'll go to the next demo, which is using the add image control. Okay, so for this one, we're actually adding documents into a document library. We're not adding that as part of an item attachment. So for this one, I'm actually using the documents document library here, which is this guy over here. So you could see there's a couple of documents, and I'm actually just surfacing those documents that are actually not as part of files. I not part of files. So I'm just showing this. I'm filtering that if it's not is folder, then actually show the documents. So I'm only showing those files that are not as part of folders. So that's why it's actually just showing those things. So if you want to show everything, so you just remove the filter, and that will actually show all the documents regardless of the hierarchy. So what happens here? I'm just want to add a document into the document library using the add image. So the add image is actually is part of the media controls, and then you have here is called add picture. And when you add that, you will get a grouped controls. And what we mean by grouped controls, that you remember there's a grouping functionality here in Power Apps, which is this guy over here. So by default, you will get group controls. In this group controls, you have two controls in here. One, it's called uploaded image, which is actually renamed. Usually it's called something else. I remember what it's called, but it's actually an image. And there's actually a button, which that you could see it's actually sort of like a special button. It does have sort of like images with a plus sign, but this is the add media button. And as you see, as I press on those, is actually they have different properties. But I'm interested actually in the uploaded image, because I want to show you how do I get the data or the content in order to save the data in SharePoint. So the first thing that I want to show you here is I haven't done pretty much a lot of things in here. So this is pretty much straightforward. So I haven't added anything into the properties of this control, but the whole thing actually happens on the upload on the upload button. So in the upload button, what I needed to do is actually get the binaries, or at least not the binaries. It does say here, it's a little bit confusing here because it says include binary data. I'm using a JSON function to extract whatever binary data that I have in the image. But it's not returning binary data. It's returning a base 64 data. And I'll show you that in a second. And the reason I'm doing that, because there's no straightforward way. So the things that happens that if you want to create items into a document library, usually you will need a binary data, not a base 64 data. So you can't do that straightforward from Power Apps. You need the help of Power Automate. You need to have a flow in order to create that data inside of SharePoint for you, because you can't actually use the connector from here from Power Apps and then use the create, for example, file function in here. And that's why we are actually doing that in here. We're getting the base 64 first, and then we're doing some data manipulation. I'll go into that in details in just a second. And then after that, I call a flow here in Power Automate to create that file. So first, I just want to show you the flow that I've created. and then we'll get back into here. So for this one, I'm actually using this create document from Power Apps workflow. And if I go into edit, this is pretty much straightforward. It's easy. It's just only 2 steps. The first one is actually a Power Apps, which we don't have anything in here that we're actually doing in here. And the second thing is that we have create file. And then we're creating a file inside of the document library. Though it's here, it says shared documents. Trust me, it's exactly that one here, which is documents. And as you can see in the link, it does say here shared documents, but it's the same list, same document library, sorry. So the first parameter that we need to get from Power Apps is the file name. And you could do that by clicking on Ask in Power Apps. And once you click that, it will actually create a parameter for you to be passed from Power Apps. And the second thing that we are passing from Power Apps is the file content. But as you can see here, we're actually using a function which is called base64 to binary. And this is actually a key thing why we're actually using the help of Power Automate to create files from Power Apps to SharePoint. The reason is there's no function inside of Power Apps that could convert from base64 into binary. And as well, there's no other way that we could actually extract the documents as binaries inside of Power Apps. And that's why we're actually using a flow. The first thing is that we pass the base64 code that we've extracted in Power Apps, and then we pass it into the flow. And then we use the function base64 to binary to convert that into binaries. And this will be actually then translated into here, and then the file could be created in SharePoint. And that's why we're actually always using a flow to help us to create those files in SharePoint or even in other sources. So we'll get back here. So the first thing I mentioned here that we set a local variable which is called var image from control, which is a variable which is actually whether it's an image or a document, it doesn't matter. But I just called it var image control. In here, I'm using a function which is called JSON, and I'm getting the image from uploaded image.image, which is this guy over here. And I'm saying that I want you to include the binaries. Though it says include binaries, again, I say it's a little bit confusing. It actually returns a base64 code. And this base64 code is actually does have kind of like a prefix, and that prefix is not needed. If you actually pass that directly into the flow, it will actually cause that into an error and cannot convert that binary or base64 into binary. And that's why we're actually using here text manipulation. We want to actually remove the things that we have actually in that string, and I'll show you how it actually looks like. Just a second. So I will just go to the pictures and probably grab this picture. And then if I go in here and go to the button, and I'll just grab this one in here. And what I want to do, I just want to insert this in here. I just want to show you how it actually looks like. So if I click this button, and if I go to File and Variables, and as you can see here, you see this. This is actually what you get when you extract that. This is not actually binary data. It's base64 data that represents the image that you've actually just seen. And if you pass exactly that into the flow, it actually will cause an error. So what I'm doing is actually I'm doing a data manipulation, and that's why I want to remove everything from the beginning until the comma, and I want to have the rest of the data, which is the base 64. And that's why I'm actually doing that in here. So I get the data first, and then I do the manipulation, which is basically just removing the prefix that I've just showed you. And then here I'm actually calling the flow, which is create document from powerapps.run. Then I'm passing the file name, which is it's getting that from the media button. And then I'm passing the var image base 64, which is this guy over here after manipulation. Then I reset the control. So then again, if I want to consume a flow inside of Power Apps, the way I do that is actually I go to Actions and then go to Power Automate. And as you can see, I've already added this over here, but if you want to consume other ones, you could just click on it and then it will be associated with your button, for example, and so on and so forth. So it's just easy and straightforward. So first you create your flow and then you come back in here and then you add it to consume it. Other than that, I don't have anything else in here. So let's try to just run this and upload. And then do a refresh. And then there you go. You have the image in here. And I think if I click on that one, you will see the image inside of SharePoint. And here are previously uploaded documents that I have from before. Okay, so there's a question, which is the attachments maximum, is that for all attachments or each? So the error message that you've actually just seen is not for the number of attachment, but actually for the size of the attachments. And that's something that you could actually edit in here. As you can see from the advanced properties, it says here the max attachments, and that's a number that you could change. And the second thing is the max attachment size, which is here is actually 10 megabytes, and that's something that you could change as well in here. So whether if it's the amount, the count number or the size, so that's something that you can change in here in the form. Hopes that answers the question. All right, so we'll move to the third demo, which is PDF viewer control. So this is a very controversial control because the thing is that usually you would want to use the PDF viewer control with a source. The problem is if you want to use that with a source, it's not actually as straightforward. Now, if you have the documents uploaded directly into your Power Apps, you could view that easily. So for example, if I have a document in here, if I upload a document, for example, let me see if I could find a document in here. And then I think that we do have PDF in here. So all right, so probably it's a big one, but at least that if you actually have the document as a link in somewhere, for example, publicly on the internet, that's not a problem. That's something that you could consume. But the problem if you want to consume that as part of SharePoint, and this is some scenario that it's actually not straightforward if you want to show the data in here. And with that, we actually need to use a flow in order to get the data in the right way for the PDF viewer to view the data in here. So for that one, I actually want to use flow to actually view the data in the PDF viewer. So we will go into Microsoft Flow. So I'll just leave that in here and then go to Get PDF Content. Go to Edit. This is as well pretty much straightforward. But the problem is that you can't actually consume that directly, as I said before, unless it's actually a link that is available on the web. Otherwise, that in SharePoint, it cannot actually populate the document, though it's actually, there's some sort of like, authentication mechanism that happens in there. I don't want to go into the details, and that's why you will not able to view the document from SharePoint, because the link that gets populated from SharePoint, it does have some sort of authentication barrier at some point, so you can't actually consume it. It can't be authenticated from Power Apps and then showing that into the I don't remember what I said before, but this actually cannot be populated into Power Apps from SharePoint. All right, so for that one, what we wanted to do is we want to get the content for the file. What we're doing here is actually we're getting the binaries for the PDF file in order to view that in the PDF viewer in Power Apps. All right, so what I did in here is we have an HTTP request in here as a trigger. And then we have the link over there. And in the link that we will add something special in the link, I will show you that later. We actually extract a query string from the URL that we have here using this. So trigger outputs, queries, item ID. Item ID is actually the query string that I will pass in here from Power Apps to the flow in here, and then I extract the ID, which is the item ID. Then I pass it into another action to get the properties of the file, which is I pass the item ID in here to get the exact document. And then after that, I get the file content. And once I get the file content, I pass that back again with the response to Power Apps. And that's pretty much it. So I'll just extract all that for you. So you'll just see that this is a recorded session. You'll see that later, and probably you'll be able to build that on your own pace. So that's pretty much it. All right. So I'll get back again to Power Apps in here. And what I do in here, so I'm just viewing the documents that are actually PDF in here. So probably I'll just go into some other step back in here, and I'll just add a new PDF document, let's say. All right, so on just to here, upload, and all right, that should do it. There you go. And then if I go back again to the PDF viewer, I should be able to see the new document. And then when I click on this guy over here, this is actually working in the background, and this will actually show the document in the background. All right, so what I do in here, when I click on the PDF icon, I'm actually consuming the URL that I have, and then I'm adding at the very end, I'm adding item ID equals this item ID. This is the only thing that I'm actually doing. And because this is a request and a response, in the response, it will actually return the content of the file. So I didn't need to do anything. So I'm just setting the variable, which is basically, it sets the file content into the var flow call URL. And then in this guy over here, the document is going to be the var flow call URL. And that's it. Is there any questions? I can see that some questions are actually popping up, right? All right, so let me go back again and see those questions, because we still have 2 demos to go, but I can actually go through some questions. So by this point, I understand there's no direct approach to upload, create documents in a document library similar to list. That's correct. We would need Power Automate to create documents always. That is correct. What are the approaches? So we're actually going through those approaches as we are speaking right now. So the first one we have actually seen, which is using the add picture control. The downside of the add picture control, you cannot add multiple ones, and that's something that we're going to address in the final two demos. And the second downside to using the add image control is that you, when you open this up, notice that this is actually looking for image files. And this is not a user-friendly way because you need to go and do all files all the time if you want to upload, for example, PowerPoint documents or other types of documents. So it's not actually intuitive. So each time you need to change that. So let's say that I've closed that and I open up again, it will open that image files, and then you have to change that to all files. And as I mentioned before as well, you can only upload one document at a time. As for the rest of the approaches, we're going to go through that later. All right. So HTTP request presumably requires premium license. That is correct. Okay, so I have a question about previous flow. Is it possible to create it without premium connectors? That's the answer is no. The one for Power Apps, the one that you actually create the document in the document library, not the PDF viewer one, the one that uses the PDF viewer one, which uses the HTTP connector. This one needs a premium license. As for the one that I've actually used to upload here in this guy over here, when we use the add picture control, this one actually does not need a premium connector because you're just using the Power Apps connector and then you're using the SharePoint, and both of those are actually not premium connectors. So you don't need premium connectors. But for those that are actually asking about having the need to use premium connectors or not, so if you do have a license within Azure, you could use Logic Apps instead. So if you want to use that for the PDF viewer, so you could exactly use the same flow that I've actually showed you guys within Power Automate, but create that within Logic Apps. You're still actually under the Microsoft umbrella, so I think people at Microsoft won't be mad that I actually gave this recommendation, but you could still use that instead of using Power Automate. All right, so can this be done with Power Apps connector and respond to Power Apps as well? Okay, so the problem is that when you actually respond to Power Apps, you get other options. So you get, for example, text, you get file, and you get different options. And trust me, I've tried that myself because that's actually a really good question, the one that you've asked. And I've tried that myself and it doesn't work. The problem is that when you return the file content, if you return it as a text, it will reformat the contents and it will return it in a wrong way. And that's why it will actually not be represented correctly in the PDF. The same thing as well applies if you return a file. It does not actually work. I've tried that myself. Probably there's some workarounds that could be done around that, but I've tried the straightforward scenario. I've tried to return a file, a string. I've tried multiple things, but actually it does not work. That's a really good question. So let me see. What about creating a PDF file from Power Apps data? All right. So if you want to create a PDF file from Power Apps data, there's two options. The first one that you could do is actually get your data and pass it from Power Apps using exactly the connector that we're using, and then pass it in convert HTML to PDF. And that's actually a free connector. I think it's actually still there, if I remember correctly. Or you could use the Word, Microsoft Word connector in Power Apps, and that means that you, if you have a premium license, you could populate a document, and then you only need to pass the values. You don't have to recreate the whole PDF file. Or you probably could use other types of paid connectors that are available within Power Automate. And the final and a good one as well would probably, you have already guessed, you could just use Logic Apps. But if you want to use Logic Apps does not have the Power Apps connector, which means that you need to use the HTTP request and then pass the ID into the request, and then get the data there, and then use probably the populate Word document there, because in Logic Apps there's no premium in standard connectors. You could you get the whole thing as part of the license that you get with Azure, so it's not a problem. Are you going to share these demos? I believe apps, please. Yeah. So as for sharing those ones, as I mentioned before, this is going to be recorded, and then you could just create whatever you want at your own pace. I'm trying to show this as much as possible. You'll probably force me to say something. I don't want to do any marketing for myself during this session, but I'll just do it anyway. So I'm actually launching, to be more specific, relaunching my channel on YouTube, and I will be doing kind of like, you know, some stuff like that. And probably I will just, if you'd like, probably I would be able to add that as well in the future videos that I will do later on. So I would probably include that as well. But I think that I might have seen, I think the next demo that I've done, I think that probably somebody have already done that before, which is, I think that it was Shane Young. They've actually done that before, but you'll get the chance as well to see it here as well, which is adding a document to a document library using the attachment control. All right, I think I've answered the questions as far. We will get some more time, probably, hopefully at the end, probably 5 minutes at the end. All right. So what we're trying to do here is actually we want to add a document to a document library using the attachment control. And the control that you see in here is actually exactly the control that you've seen it in the first one, but it's not part of the form. So if you want to extract that, what you want to do is actually select this control. And as you can see here, it's called data card value 4. So you get this one in here, you copy it, and then you go to where you want to use that. So we are actually using that in here, and then you paste it in here. At the beginning, you'll see that it's not pretty happy about the copier, that we actually have some errors here and we need to fix them. That's not a problem. We'll just make it happy. So probably you would just change the border color to be red all the time, for example. And then we have some other. So the items will get that from nowhere. We don't want to get that from anywhere. And finally, the tooltip, we don't want any tooltip. And with that, I think that there's something left in here. Okay, the color should be red. And okay, the display mode, we don't want to display mode in here, or probably we could just have the display mode to be edit all the time. Display mode dot edit, and that's it. So we've actually copied that control, which is the one that you don't have the option to add it from the controls in here. So if you search for that in here, we'll not find it in here. And the things that you need to copy that and paste it somewhere else. and then do those things that I've actually done to make it a happy control. So you will not be able to find it here. So the way that you'll do it, actually, you need to have some sort of like a SharePoint list or something, connect to it, copy the control, and then paste it somewhere else, and then you just delete the form. So this is exactly what I've done. So I'll just delete this guy over here, and we'll just use our control. All right. So the second thing that we want to do here as well is we want an image. And the reason that we want an image, we are not able to extract the document base64 without using an image. You remember that when we use the add control in here, there's actually an image and a button. This is exactly what we're doing here. We're actually mimicking the same thing that we're doing in the add picture control, but in this one, we're actually adding the image ourselves because we want to extract the base64 value of whatever document that we have and then pass it again to the flow that we have in Power Automate in order to create that document. So what I do in here, you can see that the attachment control does have a couple of events. And what we're interested about is actually the event of on add file. So on add file, what we do is we set this a variable, which is var attachment base64 raw. And then we do exactly the same method that we've actually used in the add picture control. We get the binaries from the image image from image3.image, and then we say JSON format, we want you to include the binary data. In here, we're pretty much doing exactly the same. We're just trying to remove the prefix that we have. We just want the base64 code. We don't want the prefix. And then we run the flow in here, which is exactly the same flow that we've ran in the control in the add picture control demo. And then we just do a refresh on the documents in order to show that document, and then we reset the control. The only thing that we've done here extra is that on the image, we do last attachment control attachments.value. And this will actually take the last document that have been added into the attachment control, which is this guy over here, and then get the value of that. And then we extract the base64 value, and then we pass that into our flow. And the rest of that is pretty much the same. So if we attach a file in here, so I think that we do have the file in here. So I'll just go and delete it and then add it again. I'll just open file. So it's adding, there's no buttons. It's actually this doing that automatically. If I refresh, and then we have the document in here. If I click on that one, you will see that this is the document that I've just uploaded. And the good thing about this, that the attachment control, when you open that, notice that it was showing all files. So regardless of whether this is an image or whether that it's a document, it doesn't matter. I think that this is going to download this. It's not opening this in browser. I think other types of images, because this is the other one was a vector-based image. I think that's why it wasn't showing that in the browser for some reason. But as I attach a file and then I open that, and it was added directly into the attachment control, I was able to run the flow and then save the document. All right. So now we get to the final demo, which is adding multiple documents into a document library. So I do understand that this is probably not very intuitive. Probably there's some scenarios that you want to add only one file one by one, that this works for you, but probably you want to add multiple documents at one shot. So we come to the next demo, and then we have exactly the same. We have the attachment control in here. We do have the image control still in here as well. But the thing that we are doing here is each time that we add a file in here, we're actually adding that into a local collection within Power Apps. So what I do in here, I'm actually have the var attachment base 64. I'm using the JSON function. I'm getting the image from the image control in here, and I wanted to include the binary data. I actually do the text manipulation. I just want to remove the prefix, and I just want to have the base 64 code. And then I do a collect into a collection, which is called collection attachments list. And then I have 3 columns in that collection. The first one is ID, and the ID is actually a GUID that gets auto-generated. And then I have the document name, which is the last attachment control.attachment name, which is the last attachment have been uploaded into the attachment control. And then finally, I want to have the base 64, which is the code only without the prefix. And then I'm collecting all that into that collection. And notice in here in the image, I have the last attachment that have been uploaded into that with the value, and in that way I was able to get the base 64 for that one. So let's try this one in here, and on the save, I'm doing for all. So the for all is actually a way there's like for each sort of like, you know, loop, and then this loop goes through each and every item that I have in the collection, and then executes the flow, and then creates the document in the background, and then resets the control, and then clears the list. All right, so I'll just attach a couple of documents in here. So I'll just go, I don't know if that's going to, I think this is a small document, yes. I will as well attach probably Power BI in here. And notice that this is actually showing the image because this is an image control, but for the documents, it does not do the same. I think that I do have some PDF documents in here. All right, this is because it's on OneDrive, so it's downloading that and then uploading it into the control. Before I save the data, I just want to show you what I do have in my collection. So if I go into collections, all right, so here's the collection. Notice that I have the ID and the base 64 and document name. I don't know what the hell is going on with the formatting, but all right, so you have the ID here. Okay, so you have the ID in here, and then you have the base 64, and then you have the name of the document. I think that probably it just hang up because it's actually a large base 64. I think that's the reason why it's actually doing that. I will open that again, not a problem. And go to apps, and then I go to my app. Override. I think that we have a couple of questions. I'll get back to those questions. Trust me, we will have 5 minutes for those questions. And I just want to go in here and just run that. We could just upload this guy over here, and then we could just go for this one, a Word document. And I think that's probably enough, or we could just go for an Excel file. All right, and then I click save. And then it will actually go through all the items that I have in my collection. It will save that at one shot. And then if I refresh here, you will see the documents that I've just uploaded showing here. I could just open that as well in SharePoint. All right, I'll just go check out the questions in here. Okay, you could use thumbnail in SharePoint because every document has them, and use it in PDF viewer. The thumbnail. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, but okay. Okay. Is it possible to add file from Power Apps to SharePoint library using Graph API directly, or must we use a flow in the middle to do that? So using the flow is pretty much an obvious option for non-developers. Using the Graph API, that actually folds into more developer skills, I think. And that's why I would use a flow rather than using a Graph API. But if you want to do that using the Graph API or any other APIs that you have, that's also a viable option. But still, I have to stress on the fact that you have to send that as base 64, and you want to make sure that at some point you convert that into binary, because most of those APIs that you use, and even Flow, is actually expecting to have a binary data inserted into order to create a file. Any control that takes a picture from the camera. So you do have the camera control. You could use that as well. So under the media, we have the camera control in here, and then you'll be able to capture images from that. And as you can see here, is actually showing my Snapchat camera, but you could switch between cameras as well, and you could just take those images as well from the camera. That's also possible. With Power Apps, would be possible to create a management of the welcome page of a document set for the modification of the metadata at the folder level and at the document level within the folders? I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but you are able to modify the document sets using the HTTP request to SharePoint. So there's pretty much a lot of things that if you're able to use the SharePoint API, I think that you'll be able to manipulate the documents, the document sets in there. All right. I think we're almost at the top of the hour. If there's no any other questions, I think that we could just wrap up. We just wait for 2 minutes. We do still have 2 minutes, but I just want at the end to thank you very much, and thanks as well the guys at the ESPC, the organizer, everybody working with the ESPC, and especially Shane. Thank you very much, and I would as well take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining my webinar. And I hope that you've actually enjoyed it and it was beneficial for you. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter. And if you want to ask me questions there as well, I'd answer questions there. And I'll be launching my channel as well during this week, hopefully. And if you follow me on Twitter, probably you'll get the updates as well there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ahmad. That was absolutely super. I'll definitely be subscribing to your YouTube channel. You have a convert on my side. That's it for the questions, and we are, as you said, Ahmad, pretty much out of time. We just have loads of comments coming in saying thank you, great job, very interesting, brilliant, absolutely superb. So lots of love out there as usual, Ahmad, for your time Perfect. Today. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Ahmad, on behalf of the ESPC community, just a final thank you for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it.
Anytime, my pleasure.
Super. Okay, everybody, that is the end of today's webinar. Just bear with me here for one moment. Don't forget, we are in what we are calling Power Platform Week. So do please check out further upcoming webinars at the ESPC website at sharepointeurope.com. That is the end of today's webinar. A big thank you again today to Ahmad Najjar for his time. Thank you all for joining us today. Take care.